Welcome, everybody. We got a full house, I think, from all across the country. We'll talk about some house cleaning stuff, and then we will dive right into the content because we got plenty to talk about here. So really, again, we are focused on families, students that are presumably, for a lot of you, going through this for the first time. And today we're going to talk really what I think is the best starting point, financial aid. How does this work, A, from a high level, and B, and probably even more importantly, where do you specifically, where does your family fall on this financial aid spectrum? Are you going to be eligible? No. If you're not, what does that mean? If you are, what does that mean? If you're somewhere in between, what do you need to be thinking about? So we want you to leave here just an hour from now with a good understanding. A, how does this process work? How should you be thinking about navigating it? And again, my big get is helping you understand where you fall, right? So on the housekeeping front, all of these are being recorded. Okay. I know we're going to get that question a ton. Every single one of these are going to be recorded. You will get follow-ups. You're going to get it packaged in one neat kind of package a week from today. So next Tuesday, which is the 28th of February, you will get all 4 recordings, all 4 slide decks, and the summaries of each. And I think some other really nice deliverables as you guys get ready to tackle this process. So rest assured you will get it. That said, I always, and for those of you that have followed along with us for some time, we always reward our live attendees. So every single day, we're going to have some really cool giveaways, some one-day only kind of discount coupon codes. So stick around till the end today, because that's when I'm going to release what you all are going to have access to for tuning in today, this first day kickoff. And thanks for all the activity so far. It is awesome to see you guys so engaged. So without further ado, my name's Matt Carpenter. I'm here representing College Aid Pro. We're going to guide you through this week. And if we have it our way, guide you through this entire process, right? From beginning until your kids move into the dorm and graduate from college. That's our goal, and show you how to do it in a way that rises your odds of having great outcomes. Your kids having awesome opportunities, going to have an awesome experience, and they're doing that in such a way that they're not graduating with an insane amount of debt. And parents get to retire someday. From a high level, that's our goal. I've been doing this my entire career. It's the only thing I know how to do in some ways, at least professionally. And I love it because I was the oldest of 3 kids, 2 parents that were very well intentioned, but didn't know what the hell they were doing. And both had to work and do a million things to try to support the 3 of us, and didn't probably have the time or energy or resources to commit to figuring out the right way to navigate this. And I was just an immature kid that was selfish and didn't care in some ways. And as a result, the end result was like so many people, we didn't have the best result financially. It took us all a while to come that. And so I recognized not too long after college that there was a lot of other people struggling with this, and there was a better way to do it. And that's the genesis of how we got started. And now we have this amazing team of experts and this amazing technology that is allowing us to have, I think, the success that we do in helping families tackle this. So without further ado, listen, guys, it's very hard to get the head honchos at Harvard and head honcho at MIT in the same room with us. So we feel really fortunate to have Ryan Callahan here first, and then hopefully Josh Demaio is going to join us around the halfway point. And they're going to be passing ships a little bit because Ryan is meeting with 100 other financial aid directors across the country at 12:30 here, and he's running that show. So we're very fortunate to have him for the time that we do. I think he is on the Mount Rushmore, certainly, of financial aid in terms of expertise, in terms of experience. His resume speaks for itself: Boston College, MIT, and now the head guy at Harvard. But in addition to being a part of those institutions, I've always loved from the fact that I think he really walks the walk. Of course, he's employed by these institutions and he's got a job to do for them, but he always comes at it with the family's best interests in mind. And how do I help these families have a successful end result in the same way that we do? And it's, in some ways, we can be seen as adversaries that are on different sides of the fences here. And in some institutions, that is the case. But Ryan's always seen through that and just, hey, these guys are trying to help families. I'm trying to help families. Let's collaborate here. So we're just incredibly grateful to have him as a part of our team. Again, anybody that wants to will have a chance to meet with him individually. I'll talk about how that works after at the end here today. But for now, I just want to introduce Ryan and have him start to get you educated. So Ryan, anything to add to your resume, pal, or did I fluff you up enough?
No, I think that gives a background, but just to say why I've worked with Matt and his team over at College Aid Pro, I think there's a lot of people in this space, but I think the most important attribute or asset they bring to the table is just trust and working with the families and doing it in the right way. As Matt will show you, the software they've created with the MyCap program where they've really narrowed down the inputs and then maximize the accuracy of the output in the estimated award that you're going to see, which Matt will allude to later. I just think it's that trust level that I've worked with Matt, knowing him personally, professionally for just under 20 years at this point.
Damn, I'm getting old, Ryan. Give me a second here. Let me bring up my screen quickly if I could. Okay, and then I'll pass it back to you, Ryan. Okay, so again, we're College Aid Pro guys. Our mission is pretty straightforward, albeit very ambitious, right? We're trying to end the student loan crisis, right? Full stop. And we know we can do it. We know how to do it. It's not by forgiving debt. It's by making the right decisions so you don't take on too much debt and set yourself up for success. And this is how we do it, right? And there's no secret sauce. There's no silver bullet. It's about making all kind of these micro decisions the right way for your family that, again, leads to an affordable path to college. And I don't care where you fall on the spectrum. Everybody has that affordable path, right? There's the happy trio. And quickly, before I kick it to Ryan, you got an email earlier. If you haven't done so already, take right now, create your MyCap account, right? It's free. It doesn't cost you anything. But like I said, what I want you to do is leave here not just with an understanding of how this works from a high level, but how your family fits in the spectrum. What's your EFC? What are the colleges actually going to cost you? Are you going to get financial aid scholarships? How much, right? So create your account if you haven't already, because we're going to be in and out of this. I'll put the link in the chat, but without further ado, Ryan, you can kick us off and start coaching them up here.
Sure. So my understanding is most people here are new to the field. So I think what you should try to take away from today, we're going to try to give you an overview, understand general understanding of how the process works, and then more importantly, the key terms that might be new to you, unless you come from a financial aid background, because I think that's a huge part of understanding any of the literature or ultimately the financial aid awards you're going to see from these schools. So what is financial aid? So we're going to try to take a broad topic and narrow it down and give you some explanation of the key terms to be looking for. So financial aid is basically a discount to the overall cost of attendance, the sticker price that you most typically see school to school. Within that, you can expect things, grants and scholarships. Obviously, the free money is what most families are looking for. But even within that, there's a breakdown. There's need-based grants, which again, I'll get into in a later slide, as well as merit-based grants. Need-based grants are going to be based on traditional things, income, assets, things like that. Whereas merit-based aid is really going to be more so determined on the admission side of things, where they're looking at your true T's, ACTs, GPA, things like that, as well as, and then the most, I think, commonly misunderstood one, self-help, where the other ones are free money that you don't have to pay back. Self-help is really, it's going to help you get through school, but it's self-help, where it's going to come in the form of loans, where it's student or parent loans with a repayment after school, or work study, or just general student employment that you'll earn while on campus. And the thing to note, there's need-based grants, merit grants, and loans. Those are all going to be things that once you get these set up and when you get your first bill, they're going to be listed as a pending credit for all the direct charges the school's going to charge you. There's also indirect charges, books and supplies, miscellaneous expenses throughout the year. That's really more so where the work study and student employment is going to come in. It's very important, but it's important to note that it's not going to help you pay that first bill come August 1st. It's really more for those ongoing miscellaneous expenses throughout the year. If you could jump to the next one. So need-based aid, how is this determined? A really important formula, I think it's important to know how schools are assessing need. The basic formula they use to do that, it's listed right there, cost of attendance minus the EFC equals need. But even now, you're starting to see some of the acronyms and terminology that might be confusing you. So you might see it listed as COA, that's your cost of attendance, that's your sticker price, that's all direct and indirect expenses that you're going to face. The EFC is the expected family contribution. Now, you might only see on an award letter just what the EFC is stated. You won't see what goes in, what's going on behind that. So within every expected family contribution, there's a contribution from the student and a contribution from the parent. And then within each of those, there's a contribution from income as well as a contribution from assets. Once all of that's determined, the basic formula they're going to use is cost of attendance minus that EFC is your need. And then depending on what type of school you're at, that need can be met in various ways, either At the most selective schools that have the largest endowments, you might have the full need met with scholarships and grants. You might have a combination where it's met with mostly scholarships and grants, but then a portion of that self-help, the loans and student employment. And then at some of the smaller schools, they might assess a need, but just simply not have the funding to meet that full amount. And they can only meet a portion of that need. If you could jump to the next slide.
Sure. And I guess I'll just say quickly here with a couple of our astute attendees pointed out that EFC is soon to be called SAI, Aid Index. So everything Ryan just said still applies. It's just the actual terminology is going to be changing for you. Class 2024 guinea pigs. I'll talk about those changes in detail as we close out today.
And again, so as I had alluded to, that within the expected family contribution, there's a contribution from income and a contribution from assets. And when talking to schools, you might hear this. What they're really looking for is your ability to pay that given year. But what they're looking at is income, not only now, but what they like to say is they use prior income in the form of your assets, your savings, things like that, your current income, just plain and simple, just in the form of your income for the given year they're looking at. And then also future income in the form of financing, whether it be a student or parent loan that you ultimately pay back with future income. So like I had said, within that, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, Ryan. Sorry to interrupt, but guys, I love all of you. Please put all the questions in the Q&A as opposed to the chat. That way I can hammer away on all of them. We have them archived and you'll get these in the recording. So whoever's put a question in chat, sorry for the pain, but please copy and paste it in the Q&A, and that's the best place for us to get to them. We'll do our best to get to just about all of them. Thank you.
So as I had said, within the EFC, there's that contribution from income and a contribution from assets. Income's pretty straightforward. It's basically just whichever tax year they're looking at, depending on what you're applying. It's basically just the taxed and untaxed income for that given year. For an asset, it can be a bit more complicated, or at least there's a bit less of an understanding, I think, by parents generally, is what is included as an asset. So what is an asset? Basically everything but your retirement accounts. So for all schools, when applying for aid, you're going to be doing the federal form. The FAFSA, when it comes to assets, they're breaking it down into two categories. You have for assets, you have cash checkings and savings, as well as any non-retirement investments. Those are the two basic categories of FAFSA. For the private schools that also may require you to do the CSS profile, you're going to give those same two categories, the non-retirement cash checking and savings and overall investments. But in addition to that, you're also going to report your retirement assets. Now, while you're reporting it, it's important to note when they're assessing your EFC, they're not actually factoring that amount into the EFC, but they do ask for it. And what they're using it for is just a more generalized, holistic view of the family's financial strength. So they're looking at it, but it's not actually a number that goes into the calculation. And then the last one that's on the profile that's not on the FAFSA is home equity, where they're basically going to ask you for 4 items: the purchase year of the home, purchase price, the current value, and the current debt. Really what ultimately they're looking for is the equity in that property. But even with that, it's important to note that ultimately the school then has 3 values to choose from. You report a value, so that's one. Based on the purchase price, they assume what it should be worth. And then ultimately a simple internet search, whether it be Zillow or Redfin or some site like that. And then really what the school is doing is, in most cases, taking the highest of those 3 values. And then the only thing it's really offset by is the current debt on that home. And then another distinction to make listed on here is parent assets versus student assets. They're both counted. They're both listed, factored into the parent contribution and the student contribution. Parent assets are weighed far more heavily than the student assets. Reason being, again, what you're paying for is really for the benefit of the student. So therefore their assets are going to be counted far more heavily. Also, the fact is schools are taking into account that parent assets aren't meant simply just for paying for school. So they're building in allowances for, you have to save for retirement. You have to have an emergency savings allowance. And then also if you have younger siblings, they're building in an allowance that a portion of your assets have to go to these younger children. The only asset that I haven't specifically listed is a 529, which is reported on both the FAFSA and the CSS profile. And it really depends on when this was set up. In most cases, it's the parent is the owner of it and the student is the beneficiary. And if that's the case where the parent is the owner, then it's reported as a parent asset and not a student asset. Even if it's the student is the beneficiary, it's really who the owner is that's driving who should be reporting that asset. And then keeping in mind, parent assets are weighed far less heavily than student assets when determining that ultimate expected family contribution. Is debt considered? No, but so no, it is not considered. I always recommend listing whatever you have, especially on the CSS profile. There's a special circumstances section, but as you all know, all debt isn't created. Schools are going to be far more amenable to, let's say, like debt as a result of medical expenses or something like that, far more so than they would be for consumer debt. I think you always want to mention it, but just know schools are going to be, again, if it's debt as a result of medical expenses, whether it was in that year or in prior years, or another big one is they're looking at a snapshot of your income. So in that one given year, you might have had a great year for income, but you may have been getting a business off the ground the decade prior to that, or unemployed for a few years prior to that. So if you had debt that was incurred leading up to school and your financial snapshot right now looks great, you can mention that debt, even if it is consumer debt, if it was as a result of a loss of income, whether it be for medical or any other reason in the past. So I think that's important to know. Always work with the schools, talk with them. They're humans. People went into financial aid industry for the most part because they want to help families. Now, again, so you really want to have a partnership with them, really more so than an adversarial relationship, because I do think in most cases, they can't always say yes, but I don't think anyone can blame a parent where you're just trying to do the best you can for your son or daughter, get them into the best school possible and not go broke in the process. So you might not always get the answer you want, but no one could argue with that type of logic when dealing with the schools.
Yeah, that's awesome, Ryan. Yeah, let me just, and I know you got to run in a minute and you just bounce out whenever you have to, but I just want to pause here because I think there's two, in my mind, really important points here. Number one, again, especially at the federal schools, the schools that only require the FAFSA, any savings, investments, et cetera, on the student's name are factored much heavier, okay, with much more significance than in the parent's name. So that's something that you can potentially take action on. If there's a meaningful amount of money in the student savings account, we'd much rather have that in the parent savings account in terms of being eligible for the most amount of financial aid. The other big one that we hit here, and we do entire presentations on this, is that a lot of these colleges that require the CSS profile, and I know that's a new term, I promise we're going to explain what that is, but it's a financial aid application that's required in addition to the FAFSA. They consider a home equity fair game if you own your home, okay? And there's a spectrum of how much they actually consider that home equity. But number one, we want to help you identify what schools are doing that and how much, and what can we do to hopefully reduce some of the burden there, right? How do we get creative in terms of how we value that? Are there ways to show some more debt? I just want to make sure that everybody's clear on that, because I think it's not necessarily common knowledge, either of those 2 points.
And then, so I'll try to get through this slide and then hop off and then hopefully be able to answer any individual questions maybe in later meetings. So it's probably 5 or 6 years, it was a while back, where they switched from schools used to use prior year income. So again, so for someone applying right now for the next year, 23-24 year, they would have previously been using 2022 income. However, since a lot of times they're filling this out in the fall of, let's say, 2021, what the federal government did was switch to prior year. And it was for the ease of filling out the form, so that when you're filling it out and it's referencing a specific tax line, you have the completed taxes. And in most cases, income stays relatively flat or goes up from one year to the next. It's no different to any families. But for families who had a change in income, it can be a detriment, but it actually opens the door to help you choose which year ultimately is the best reflection of your ability to pay. So by using prior year, so again, so applying for next year, the 24-25 academic year, by default, you'll be using the 2022 taxes. Let's say, though, you had a drop in employment or a loss of employment in 2023, 2024. You're going to communicate that to the schools. And it actually, as much as you don't want to have that happen to you, it does at least present an opportunity where if 2022 is a better reflection of your ability to pay, you don't have to do anything. But if financial circumstances have got worse since then, it opens the door to go back to the school and either submit this time next year your completed 2023 taxes if they're lower, or a lot of schools are even amenable to, as it's listed here, using some form of an estimate for 2024 income, and even potentially give some estimated aid, and then ultimately use it as a placeholder until you can finally give your completed 2024 taxes in the spring. So just keep that in mind. By default, you're using prior year. So for next year, the 2022 taxes. But if anything changes, you have to be open and communicate that to the school. Every school might view it slightly differently, but almost across the board, they're amenable to working with you to the year that's really the best reflection of your ability to pay, which is really what they should be after when assessing your financial need.
Ryan, I appreciate you, brother. I know you got to bounce, pal. And everybody, like I said, we'll let you know how to have one-on-one direct access to Ryan should you want it beyond today. And we have him on as a guest fairly frequently, as much as he'll put up with us and as much as his schedule allows. But thank you and good luck with your next meeting here, bud.
All right, thanks, Matt. Thanks.
Okay, guys, okay. I know I'm not sharing my screen and Ryan had to leave us here, but bear with me 1 minute because the next thing that I want to do is just spend a couple minutes talking about what happens. Listen, there's just going to be a percentage of you that are not going to be eligible for need-based financial aid, or at least not a ton of it, right? So what can you do to capture some discounts here? Obviously, the most, I guess, obvious one is scholarships, right? It is identifying colleges that are likely to give your kid a meaningful scholarship just based on their credentials and based on what the college is looking for. And Ryan mentioned some of the obvious ones in terms of GPA and test scores, but now more and more kids are going test optional, and there's more and more scholarship opportunities for those test optional kids. And more colleges are taking a more holistic approach, right? Certainly test scores and scholarships, there's still a direct line there for a lot of colleges. But if your kid's not a great test taker, and even if they're not a great student, there's still plenty of schools that will give them a scholarship. That's part of their model. And we'll look at that in a minute here. But that's the most obvious way. It's also important, and I think less obvious, to know that some of these schools require you to complete these financial aid applications, even if you're not eligible for financial aid, just to be considered for their merit-based scholarships, right? It would be NYU would be the biggest example here, one of the more popular schools. That's how they operate. Now, the easiest way to figure out where you're going to get a scholarship and for how much, if you haven't already, create your account, put it in the platform, put any school in, and we're going to tell you, and I'll jump in there in just a second. But we've got a few questions around, are private colleges more generous with scholarships? I guess we could say so as a general rule, but what's also important to know is that about 100 of the most popular colleges there are, scholarships do not. Ryan's at Harvard, nobody's there on a scholarship. Josh is at MIT. Nobody's there on a scholarship. Even Tufts here in Boston, Stanford, these types of schools, scholarships do not exist. I don't care what type of athlete you are. Well, Stanford's a little bit of an exception where they do have athletic scholarships, but there's not one kid in Ivy League that's there on a scholarship. If they're getting a discount, it's because they're eligible for need-based financial aid. So it's important to know what schools actually give scholarships that also align with the criteria that's important for my kid. And the last thing that I'll just tease here, and it'll be the last slide that I'll just spend a minute on, we want to apply to competing schools because we can leverage them against one another, right? If I have a family that is obsessed with Northeastern here in Boston, I make them apply to Boston University, even if they hated it, knowing we're never going to attend there. We just want to use that as leverage. That's an important thing to maximize scholarships as well here. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to jump into our platform. And for those of you that have this open right now, you can hopefully get an idea yourself here. And if you haven't created an account, again, go to mycap.collegeaidpro.com. I'll just throw it in the chat again. Give me 1 second and create your account because it's going to do a few things right away. Ryan explained what your EFC is, your expected family contribution. Okay. Soon to be called the SAI, the Student Aid Index, but same philosophy. To further complicate things, there's actually 3 different EFCs. The third one's going away. Again, some of these big changes that are happening for you class 2024 and moving forward. But the schools that just require the FAFSA, now this is a actual family of 4 from the little city that I live in Beverly, Massachusetts here. Average income, average assets, but they're also homeowners, right? So a lot of the schools that use the institutional methodology, they consider your home to be fair game. So that's why that EFC is so much higher for this particular family, because these are the schools that are going to be looking at their home equity. Okay, so we can see what our EFCs are, but the other thing that I want you to think about here, and one of the first things that I just want you focused on as you're starting to inquire about particular colleges, it's not about the cost of attendance, right? For most families, the cost of attendance is going to be misleading, right? The advertised sticker price. It's all about what are you going to actually pay? As you're looking at schools, I don't want you to focus on the sticker price. I want you to focus on your net cost. put your information in here, put colleges in here, and we're going to tell you what your net cost is going to be at any of these schools. Now, just to give you an idea how it works and take a closer look, throw in the chat, throw out some colleges, right? Let's take a look at one or two to get an idea about what these families would pay. Are we going to get financial aid? Are we going to get scholarships? What schools are you thinking about at home? Okay, Belmont's a good one. Let me put Belmont in here. Okay, down in Nashville. So this family, okay, sticker price is around $56,000. We're going to get discounted down to $35,000. If I want to get more information on any school, I can dig in why. Okay, why are we getting a discount here? This family is going to get, and I got a question like this before, they're going to be eligible for some need-based financial aid based on their EFC. They're also going to be eligible for some scholarship dollars, but they won't get both. It's very rare that colleges stack grants and scholarships. They'll get the highest of these two numbers to drive them down to their net cost. And again, we can get some answers in terms of the why. If I click on the admissions, it's going to tell us the average GPA, the average test scores. So it usually makes sense where, okay, I see why my kid's getting a scholarship. We'll also tell you their business model. What type of EFC do they use? Do they look at home equity? How transparent are they in terms of how they do business? Hey, Josh, just in time, buddy. I'll have a little bit more before I kick it over to you. But the other thing we have here is every scholarship at every country in the college. I'm sorry, every scholarship for every college in the country. And we're really good at projecting how much are you going to get. Okay. Another school that I saw on here, I think was Duke. Let's look at Duke here. Now, Duke's a school that, again, is obviously very expensive, very hard to get into, but also very generous with need-based financial aid, right? So we can see here that the kid's not going to get a scholarship here. Nobody's going to get a scholarship there unless they're playing basketball, right, for the Dukey Dukes here. But they're very generous with need-based financial aid. And even though they're a private school, they don't hold home equity against you. So I'm getting pretty far in the weeds here and telling you all more than you need to know. But the big takeaway is it all comes down to what is your inputs, right? What type of student, what type of financial situation is your family in? And then how generous or not are these particular colleges, okay? And then another feature here that I think is awesome as you're building your college list is I can actually search for schools based on the criteria that's important to my family, right? So if I say, hey, my kid's probably going to want to be close to home and they probably prefer smaller schools, and they're thinking about majoring in business, and we can put any number of filters in here. I just want you to order based on that criteria and who's most generous with financial aid. And it's a great way to give me some additional ways to help me build my college list. Or if I'm not eligible for financial aid, just sort based on who's going to give me the most in scholarship dollars. Okay. Now, this part of our platform is not part of the free version. Okay. But I'll talk about what you can do for anybody that wants to upgrade to get access to that part of it again at the end here. And we got a pretty awesome discount that's today only. But that's, again, hopefully gives you a decent framework of what you should be thinking about for those of you that aren't going to be eligible for need-based financial aid or not much financial aid. So we have some additional kind of things to think about, again, when we're talking about this need versus merit. But what I want to do is kick it over to Josh, who's going to spend a little bit of time talking about the financial aid application process itself for the next, let's call it 15 or so minutes here. But yeah, Josh, thanks again for joining us, buddy. I know you're jam-packed today, so thanks for being Johnny on the spot. And Ryan just had to exit stage left, and here you are in time here.
I'm glad I could make it. Thanks for having me on. I really liked hearing what you were just saying. I know in speaking with families, I have often said that one of the biggest values of a site like this is really helping families sort by the schools that makes the most sense to apply to on a net cost or just an affordability basis. Obviously, most families are going to be applying for aid no matter what school they go to, at least trying to see what might be offered to them. And so just like Matt said, I'm just happy to go through a few really high level steps about applying for aid. Obviously, the very first step is the FAFSA. I think most people have probably heard of that.
And Josh, sorry, just take 1 minute to introduce. I spoke about you at the beginning here, but just quickly introduce yourself and where you're at right now and your trajectory for how you got where you landed. Just talk a little bit about your experience, if you would.
Yeah, of course. So I have spent a long time working in higher ed. I've worked in a lot of different roles, worn a lot of different hats over the years. I have spent well over a decade working with undergrads, specifically in financial aid. I was helping to determine financial aid awards. I was also at one point helping parents with specifically with student loan questions and issues that they were facing. So I've been front end customer service. I've also been on the back end helping build some of the systems that are used to award financial aid that are currently in use at schools all over the country. So I've been on both sides of that equation. Right now, I am in my full-time job working primarily with graduate students at MIT. And so I am almost entirely with a combination of PhD and master's students right now, but I'm leveraging, like I said, about a decade and a half of experience, both in schools and as a consultant for schools and outside companies working with undergrad students and their families. So.
Yeah, thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Somehow or another, over the last couple decades, I've become an expert in financial aid and in awarding and applying for financial aid. And so I think my participation in a webinar like this or having conversations with families on this level is a lot like what all my friends with college age kids are asking me about when I'm walking around town. So I'm happy to help go through the process a little bit. I think, like I said, the first step is the FAFSA. I think a lot of people have heard of it, don't really understand necessarily that it is itself an application for federal student aid, the free application for federal student aid. That's what you're doing when you complete the FAFSA. It's required by every school for every applicant, regardless of the type of financial aid that they offer, whether it is merit aid, need-based aid, federal only aid, whatever it is they're going to be offering, you do have to do the FAFSA. The term that you'll hear a lot of people use is prior income, which basically is an easy way of saying that the FAFSA requires income information from 2 years ago when you're applying for aid. The reason for that is they use your income taxes as basis for the information you should put on the FAFSA. And when you're going through the aid application process, you won't yet have your income tax information from the most recent year, so they allow you to use it from 2 years ago. FAFSA is available on October 1st of each year. So as of October 1st of this year, you'll be able to apply for class of 2024 financial aid applications. You'll be using your 2022 income to do that, which means you'll be using your 2022 tax returns, which hopefully by fall of this year, most people will have available to them, easy access. They can get the numbers they need to fill out the FAFSA or really easily link the FAFSA to the IRS in what they call the data retrieval tool and have them populate some of those income fields for you. So one way or the other, you should have the information you need. FAFSA is relatively straightforward, not super time consuming for most families. You just want to make sure that for the most part, you're being as consistent as possible and keeping in mind if you're also going to be going ahead into what we're going to talk about next is the CSS profile at some of the schools that you're applying to. So the CSS profile is only required mainly by private schools that are doing a need-based analysis, but there's over 200 schools like that do require it. Profile is much like the FAFSA, except a lot more complicated and complex. Usually takes people a little bit more time to go through. Questions are a little bit more invasive. Like I said, it's used by schools that are really doing a need-based analysis, mainly because they feel like the FAFSA isn't detailed enough. So they don't feel like they're getting the information they need from the FAFSA. And so they are very specifically using the profile to get more information out of you. That's definitely what the whole point of the profile is for these schools. I think one of the things to keep in mind is that it is be consistent across the two forms. So if you know you're going to be doing the profile, keep that in mind when you're doing the FAFSA, because you're going to want any big discrepancies between the two forms might cause questions on the school side. Some of the mistakes that you can avoid on both the FAFSA and the profile, really high level, don't include retirement accounts and personal investments. Any 529 plans you have, they should probably be reported on the parent side rather than the student side so that we're not getting them counted at the student asset rate, which again, don't want to get too in the weeds, but essentially both the FAFSA and the profile look at student assets much closer than they do parent assets. So anything you can put on the parent side as opposed to the student side is definitely going to benefit you. On the profile in particular, you'll see the home equity questions that so many people have concerns about. Donors are going to find that they get a lot more questions asked on the profile than they do on the FAFSA. And that includes like sole proprietor, self-employed people, right up to people that own larger businesses with lots of employees. And you're definitely going to find on the CSS profile that schools that use that often are requiring information from both what they would call the custodial and the non-custodial parent, which means basically both parents in a divorce situation need to be submitting information rather than only one. So for those reasons, you do find a lot more complications with the profile than you do the FAFSA.
Yeah, and let me just reiterate there because we got a ton of questions about it, right? What two household families divorced, separated, how do we handle that? Only one household completes the FAFSA, right? And right now, it's whomever the student lives with the most. The terminology is the custodial parent or parent. So if that custodial parent is remarried, then both of their information, that step parent's information, goes on the FAFSA. It's still as if the other biological parent really doesn't exist. So for the schools that are only requiring the FAFSA, they're only looking at that one household. Now, this is one of the major changes that I'll hit on in a second here that's going to happen next year, right? You class 2024 are the guinea pigs in that who the Department of Education, the federal government, wants to complete the FAFSA is the household that provides the most financial support. Okay. Now, in my opinion, this is even more of a gray area because in just talking with a lot of families anecdotally, they're like, well, I'm not sure who that is because yes, this parent pays child support, but I pay for the mortgage and all the groceries and living. So it's hard to say. Now, you would want to be able to, and how I'm coaching it, speaking for me, how I'm coaching it for folks that I get in front of is you would like to be able to defend a scenario in which the household that has the least income, the least assets, that's going to have the lowest EFC is also the one that provides the most financial support. It doesn't always work out that way, but from an EFC standpoint, to maximize your odds of getting the most financial aid, that's what you would want to do. Now, at schools like an MIT, Harvard, Boston College, that also require the CSS profile, they're getting information from both households either way, right? You will fill out the CSS profiles separately, but they're going to be looking at both so that, for lack of a better word, becomes less significant at these schools that want the information from both households. So hopefully that's helpful. And it goes back to that first slide that again, or that when we talk about how to actually apply for financial aid, I would double down here to say every school is different, right? So as you're building your list of colleges, the onus is on you. The responsibility is on the family to figure out what applications your schools require. What are their deadlines? Do they need the information from both households if we're a two household family, right? And that's where it gets to be pretty cumbersome in a lot that this is not completely streamlined, right? Every school has their different way of doing business, for lack of a better word here. So I don't know, anything else you would add, Josh, about the financial aid application process itself or application overall?
So one thing that I would say that I think it's useful to keep in mind as you go through these forms is that these are student forms, right? So these forms are directed at the students. So a lot of times the wording of the question is, what did you have? What do you have? And typically, unless they're specifically telling you otherwise, those questions are directed at the student. And I think that sometimes that confuses parents who are really taking the reins and going through and doing this actually mostly themselves. So you just got to remember that these are student forms. So if you are looking at, especially when you're going through a divorced situation for the profile, both of those forms are linking back to the same student. You want to make sure that you're not double counting things. You want to make sure that you're not putting the same assets on both the non-custodial and the parent side. If you have shared assets like real estate or anything like that, you definitely want to split those up when you're reporting them as well. So just keep in mind that they're all student forms. And I think that'll help you be clear on how to answer some of their questions as you go through.
No, great call. Thanks, Josh. And if you wanted to, you're totally up to you. I know you got a jam-packed day. If you got to scoot, and otherwise you can hang around, help out in the Q&A or
yeah,
whatever.
I can definitely hang around and help out with the Q&A a little bit.
Yeah, go ahead and bang around in there. Get your work cut out for you. I'm about 60 questions behind. But yeah, we're not going to get to everybody's day, guys. But like I said, we'll talk about, just as I wrap at the end here, how you can engage with us on a more one-on-one basis today and moving forward. So some major changes happening on the FAFSA. There's some great ones. And the theme there is that the form itself is getting easier. So that's going to help more families actually be able to complete the form. There's this kind of heartbreaking statistic that about 2/3 of low-income families don't complete the FAFSA. And a lot of that is just, it's too hard and overwhelming, oftentimes language barriers, etc. So the hope is that more people are actually getting through this form to make sure they throw their hat in the ring. There's going to be more resources for the families that need it the most. Okay. I think all of us can get completely behind those great changes, but there's going to be some real bad ones, right? I've got a lot of questions about twins or multiples. I'm going to have whether the kids are in the same year or are going to be overlapping at all. there's this major change that's happening that's really not a good one. And that is that right now, if you have more than one kid in school at once, the formula accounts for that. So if your EFC was 20,000 and all of a sudden the next year you get another kid in college, but you have the same income and the same assets as a household, now that 20,000 is divided evenly between the two kids. Okay, you can still afford 20,000 a year for college, but we're going to say this one can afford 10, this one can afford 10, 20 total for the household. That is going away. Okay, the Department of Education got rid of that rule. Class 2024 is the first year this is going into place. So now effectively, for a lot of families that are going to have more than one kid in school at once, the cost of college is going to double, which is a real problem, right? And it really sucks. Now, it's unlikely that this is going to be the case at the MITs, at the Harvards, at these types of schools. I'm not speaking on behalf of any of those institutions, but based on the conversations I've had with most of these types of schools, with a lot of the schools that require the CS profile, they're still going to give you a break for having more than one kid in school at once. It's a different percentage than how the federal government looks at it, but you get a break, for lack of a better word here. But these FAFSA only schools, that is very likely going away. And again, it's a problem. Now, outside of kicking and scream about it, what we have done is I've actually started, I am doing and let me actually grab this link. Bear with me for 1 second here as we jump, but sorry, I want to grab this link. I know I'm not sharing here, but what we have done is start a petition where families can sign this, and we got about 65,000 signatures. But the real decision makers are telling us that until we get 100,000 signatures, it's incredibly unlikely that we're going to be able to move the needle. So please sign it, please share it, especially if you are negatively impacted by this rule. And if you're not, I promise some of your buddies are going to be, your family, your neighbors, etc. Certainly a lot of people I care about. Again, please sign it, please share it. It takes 20 seconds, and it's something that you can really do to help yourselves and to help us. Okay. Last kind of thing that I'll tease here before I talk about go forward in the rest of the week, etc. Not necessarily common knowledge part of this process is that after what we're very busy with right now for the class 2023 families is they've been accepted into colleges, they've got their financial aid package or their financial aid award letters, and we're helping them strategically go back to colleges to say, hey, how can I do better? We got the initial offer, but how can I do better? Interesting timing for Josh having to duck out there. It's not for him and Ryan, it's not their favorite thing to talk about when we broadcast in front of a bigger audience. I know that's not why he left. I know he had to leave, but they are a lot of families, class 2023 families will meet with those guys to say, hey, how do we go back to this institution and get more money? And there's a real method to that madness. It gets fairly scientific, part art, part science. And just to be clear, Josh cannot help somebody that's trying to get more money from MIT, and Ryan cannot help somebody that's trying to get more money from Harvard. They can't compete against themselves, but any other institution in the country. We're really fortunate to have those guys on the team. But a way that we can have a successful appeal ahead of time and put ourselves in a position to maximize our odds of doing this the right way for you class 2024 families a year from now is that as you build that list, making sure that you are applying to competing schools when you are doing that. Okay. So let me take a few minutes here to talk about, like I said, we have, for anybody that attends live, right? And this is something we don't do this when we present at schools, because when we present at high schools, we cannot promote or sell any of our services or really even talk about any of our services that are just not of the free variety. And I would like to say, I think we offer an amazing suite of free resources. And I encourage you, if nothing else, to continue to follow along with us, certainly this week, but beyond, because we give constant free content as much as we can. Every other week, we do have something called office hours, which is basically just open door access to us. And you can sign here. I'll grab the link in a minute here. But in terms of going beyond that, if you want to upgrade to the full version of the software that allows you to look at unlimited colleges, the free version, you can only look at 3. That gives you that advanced search that has our $9 billion private scholarship search engine in there. You can do it. You can have access to that for a year and use this. And this will be for today only. It expires at 5 p.m. This 24 Bootcamp will be a discount code off of any of our products, for lack of a better word. So if you want to upgrade the software, it'll go from $149 to $113. What I would recommend you do if you're more of that DIYer type of person, family, etc., in addition to getting the software, I would recommend that you choose the valedictorian option. Okay, so if you go to upgrade on the platform, I'll show you in a minute here, but use this coupon code 24 Bootcamp. It'll be $227. You get access to the platform for a year, and you get a one-on-one meeting with anybody on our team. It could be me, it could be Josh, it could be Ryan, whoever you want, or just the next available. This is the best place to start, right? What are the things that you should be thinking about? How do you maximize financial aid opportunities? What are schools actually going to cost you? What are schools that aren't on your radar that you should be thinking about? If you are divorced, if you are separated, if you are a business owner, I would firmly recommend you take advantage of this. And again, if you book today, you get 24% off. And I will say, and anybody that's on here that's been with us for a while could attest to this, we've never had a steeper discount. This is the biggest discount we've ever done, but we haven't done a winter boot camp. So again, I like to reward our folks that show up with us live, and how you do that specifically is on the platform itself. You can just go up if you haven't logged in already and talk to an expert, or upgrade. If you're just on the free version, I'll say upgrade here, choose the valedictorian option, put in that coupon code, and you will get that really significant discount code. But you got to book it today, right? That does expire at 5 Eastern time today. So that's just our deal there. And then the other thing is, for those of you that are not DIYers and are just like completely overwhelmed with this process, right? Which I just been doing long enough to know that there's just a percentage of families and individuals that fit in that bucket. We have this package called Wake Me When It's Over. Okay. Which basically means you work with somebody on our team one-on-one through the entire process, unlimited access. We help build your list of colleges. We actually complete the financial aid forms for you. So we do the FAFSA, we do the CS profile, we do all the, institutional applications or the non-custodial profile. We are the ones on the front lines helping you appeal for more financial aid, or we can't use the word negotiate, right? We get to tap into Ryan and Josh and the other professionals on our team. And then we help you out. How do you actually pay the bill, right? If you're going to have to borrow money, what's the right loan? If you have resources, when do you use what? Okay. And these are, again, the type of families that are just like, I don't have time to do this. We have a complicated situation. We're business owners, or I'm not going to qualify for aid, but we can't spend $85,000 a year. How am I going to pull this off? So the cost is way more, as you might expect, right? This is $29.99, but again, our kind of today only coupon code, it's $500 off, right? Now this, we will not take too many clients. It's just a bandwidth issue for and I'm putting this link in the chat, but if you wanted to do this, there is a little bit of urgency in terms of like our rock will close fairly soon, just because again, we can only work with so many individuals with kind of this unfettered access. So there is a little bit of urgency for this. Less so for the platform, certainly less so for if you want to book an hour outside of just, again, there's some urgency there to take advantage of the coupon code today. One more thing I want to say, if you are a family that does not have any resources or has very few resources, but you would like full access to our platform, just write into us, okay? support@collegeaidpro.com and say that you want full access to the platform, but you can't even afford the $113. We'll give it to you for free. If there's any school counselors that are listening, this is something that we have for all free and reduced lunch families. We give you the platform for free. We underwrite that. We don't vet it or anything like that. We just take you at face value. So just write into us and say, we want full access to the platform, but we can't afford it. We will underwrite that for you. We can't do it for the 1 hour meetings. We can't do it for the Wake Me When It's Over, just because we have to pay all of our folks. And unfortunately, we're not in the economic position to be able to do that at scale, but we're happy to do it with the platform. And the full platform, again, we've got a few questions here. Let me just jump in here. The free version, you can only put in 3 schools, okay? And you don't have access, as opposed to unlimited, you don't have access to the private scholarship search engine, and then you don't have the advanced search, right? So the ability to just say, hey, go show me schools near me that are small, and I just want you to list them based on who's most generous with financial aid. or I just want you to list them based on who's going to give my kid the biggest scholarship, where, hey, maybe I wasn't thinking about Wheaton College, but if they're going to give my kid a $42,000 discount, I'm all ears, right? Which is actually a great little liberal arts college south of Boston up here. So those are some of the big differences. Again, even if you're thinking about that, my recommendation is do the valedictorian, because in addition to the platform, you can meet with any one of us for an hour, and you can schedule that whenever. You can do it right now. You can choose a time later, use that hour for whatever you want. And let me just tell you right now, and this is being recorded, so I encourage everybody to hold me to this. If you don't get your money's worth, whether it's for the platform or certainly for the hour, the Wake Me When It's Over, we'll give you 100% refund. We don't fuss around with that. We're not going to make you go through the ringer to get your money back. It happens. We've given people their money back before, but it's incredibly rare. As a matter of fact, for people that have booked an hour, it's happened exactly once. And I will say I was not a part of that meeting, but was privy to the details. And I think that was more on that individual than on our part, but nonetheless, that's the deal. So again, don't overthink it, guys. This is, especially if you're just starting this process. If you're a class 2023 family, it's not too late, because we can help you appeal. Meet with Josh or Ryan, me, whoever will help you with your appeal or how to pay the bill. But if you're an underclassman, this is where you should start the process. And I believe that so wholeheartedly and sincerely that, again, it's on me to give a full refund if you didn't get value there. Yeah, in the niche app, I think it's pretty good with admissions. It really doesn't do anything of value in terms of financial aid. How do we access the Wake Me? Yeah, that is a different link. Let me put it in the chat. So the Wake Me When It's Over link, guys, is in the chat. So it's College Aid Pro / Wake Me When It's Over. That's where you sign up for that package. That is different than the app. And of course, that will include your app as well, right? You'll get full access to the platform and that one-on-one experience from end to end with us as well. So yeah, that, and I can put it in chat here again. Yeah, we tested the code. It should be working. And let me just make sure here. I can verify in a second here. Somebody said the code's not working, but on my end, I was seeing that it was. Let me just verify. Let me verify this, and then again, stay on for some more Q&A here. But yeah, the code is in fact working. I see some that have come through here. The code is working. It's 24 Bootcamp. And again, it's just going to be, I shouldn't say just, but it's $500 off the Wake Me When It's Over. For the platform, it's 24% off. So it'll be, if you're just getting access to the platform, it'll be the price points of the 113 or the 227. Yeah, and the value for class 2023 families, I know there's only probably a handful on here, is that we can help with the appeal. So once you're accepted, how do you go back and get more money from colleges? Our average right now is $10,000 more on the appeal. So we got a great batting average. That's not the expectation I would set in most families. I would say the median is more in the $3,000 to $5,000 range more of our appeals, but our actual mean, our average is 10,000, because we've had a couple astronomical successful appeals, 52,000, 40,000, a couple 30,000s that have skewed our statistics a little bit in a good way for us. But I wouldn't hold out that, hey, we can get you $10,000 more, even though that's what the average says. My expectation that I would set and feel more confident is the 3,000 to 5,000. Okay. Yeah, the code worked for valedictorian. I have twins. Is there a way to yeah, you need 2 accounts for twins, right? But we can give you, and just write this into support, we'll give you a half off code, 50% off code for the other kid. Okay, so you don't have to buy 2 for the kids. Okay. Yeah, you can sign up for a one-on-one session anytime. Again, book it today. Do the valedictorian package today to get the discount, but you can use it whenever you want, now, year from now, whenever you want. And yet the 24 Bootcamp is working. So write into support at collegeaidpro.com if you're having trouble. We'll get you across the finish line, but I have verified that it is in fact working. After the year is up, good question. You have the ability to stay on the platform for full access for $4.99 a month. So effectively $5 a month. Okay. So after a year, leading up to the year, we'll tell you, hey, your anniversary date is coming a month from now. We'll give you a few reminders. If you want to stay on, it's $4.99 a month. And then the nice part about that is you automatically get pretty significant discounts to any of our other kind of products. Once you're a member, then you become a member of ours, and some partners as well. But yeah, good question. And the short answer is no, you don't, so long as you'll pay the $4.99 a month. Yeah, and sorry, I'm getting a few more requests for the coupons codes. It's It's 24 boot camp, but I will put it into the chat here. 24 boot camp. Yeah, 24 boot camp. That is the coupon code, guys. And I can confirm it's working because I'm seeing a whole bunch come through. But then otherwise you can write support at collegeaidpro.com and just say it's not working for me. And we have very capable folks that will get you across the finish line. Yeah, certainly. Listen, if you have a sophomore right now, it is not too early. You're already in your base income year. Your base income year started this January 1st. So you're already in the thick of it. To maximize your odds of having the most successful kind of end result here, we have plenty of data to support this. The earlier you get started and get yourself educated, the better off you're going to be, in terms of maximizing your odds of having a good end result here. So I would definitely do that. Yeah. So write into us, guys, support at collegeaidpro.com. If again, your coupon code isn't working, I will put it in here again, 24 boot camp. Okay. And then and I'll put it in here again as well. Oh, sorry there. Answered for Kim. And I can stay on for a couple of more minutes, guys, whether you have questions about just your scenario or our services. Tomorrow is Princeton Review, test prep, test optional, AP courses, and then we have the scholarship system, which is all focused on private scholarships on Thursday. And then on Friday is really focused on building that list, right? From an admission standpoint, what do we need to be thinking about? And Brian Ford will be joining me for that day. And it's really, he reads applications for Boston University, for the UCs. He's read tens of thousands of applications. So his brain is unbelievable in terms of, hey, here's what we're looking for on your Common App. Here's what we're looking for on your essay. Here's what we need to be thinking about for interviews and things like this. Here's where to start again in building this list. That's super helpful. Okay. Okay, I'm trying to, guys, and unfortunately, I'm just not going to be able to get to all the questions. We have several hundred, so it's just not feasible for us. Okay, and I see he's not having luck here. I will do my best to try to get somebody on our team to email you. So, guys, listen, stay in touch with us all week if you can. Again, we'll have some other promotions throughout the week, certainly on Friday live when we meet with Brian. But yeah, like I said, don't overthink it, guys. I know the last thing you want to think about is spending money when it comes to these crazy prices you're looking at, $85,000 for college and all this, but you're going to get a return on this investment. And if we don't show tangible proof of that, we'll give you your money back. It's that simple. So put us to the test there, hold us accountable, tune in with us for the rest of the week. If you have friends, if you have family members that you think might benefit from anything, please share the invite. We'd love the more, the merrier. Awesome participation today. Awesome questions. Okay. And and somebody on my team just jumped on. I guess some people are having the code issue, even though some folks are not. So we are actively working on it. And yeah, for the free and reduced lunch folks if you're a school counselor and you want to offer that to your high school, write into us, support at collegeaidpro.com, and we will tell you how to give access to all the families that fit into that category, okay, at your school. So please write into us and we will help you, me specifically, will help you facilitate that. If you are somebody that can't afford the $113 yourself, write into us and we will get you on the platform. We will walk you through that. We don't have payment plans, guys. So make sure that if you can't afford the $113, again, write into us and we'll take care of you. We just ask you to be honest there. Please don't take advantage, obviously, but we trust you. And again, anybody and everybody that is not having luck with the coupon code, we promise I will get back to it today. Our team will get back to you today. They are all over it. I've been told by a couple of them they are all over it, and my team is more than capable, and I will certainly put you to the test there, or we will put us to the test. Okay, great. I think that's it for today, guys. Looking forward to helping you all the rest of this week. Thanks again for the great participation, and we'll see everybody tomorrow, I hope.